But also where I play is, how do we build high performing teams? How do we get the best from our people? How do we get our people to show up, our teams to deliver on what they need to deliver in a way that is cost effective, productive, and also delivering products and solutions that are a good fit for the market, that are going to
Mhm.
be good ethical frameworks. It's like they need to be effective and to work, but also to be good for the users. One of my old clients used to talk a lot about trustworthy technology. We need to deliver technology that is actually in the best interests of users. That's not only
Yeah.
going to deliver what they're expecting, but be safe, manage their data well, be secure. And these are obviously challenges that leaders deal with on a daily basis.
Hello, everyone. I'm here today with Caroline New, one of the great people in our community, a senior member who has extensive experience in working particularly with people in ICT industry, working with ICT leaders in coaching capacity. So before I start, Caroline, do you want to introduce yourself to people?
Sure. Thanks, Ashkan. I've been in the tech industry since the late 1980s, initially working as a communications consultant, and the last sort of 18, 19 years working as a leadership coach, facilitator, and trainer. So I work with CIOs, CTOs, tech founders, helping them to be effective leaders, to influence the agenda, and to really shape the direction that their organization is taking.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. You do a better job introducing yourself than me, Caroline.
Would
Yeah.
you like me to
So,
introduce you, Ashkan? Because I've known you for 5 years now, and as someone who is a technologist yourself, I'm just inspired by how much else you've done. So, you're a venture builder, you're a philosopher, you've written 3 best-selling books, Human Being, The Being, and Becoming, and I know that you have at least 4 or 5 other books on the go, so I'm excited to see what they look like as they're shaped and released. And you're
yeah,
someone who is a very deep thinker, which is why I love working with you and why I think the work that you do is so important for the tech industry. So don't blush. I hope that's okay. But I'm looking forward to this conversation with you about
yeah,
how who we need to be as leaders in the tech sector, which is so dynamic, so fast moving, and so much shaping the world in which we live.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Caroline. So, to people out there that are watching us, so some of you may have watched some of the existing videos on my YouTube channel and the various different playlists. And this is the number one episode of a new playlist where we talk about leadership and tech. So the context is most of the technology people, including myself, because I have that deep background in technology, particularly software development, and obviously I'm quite keen on the new technologies and often referred to as AI and machine learning and so on. So, but I happen to be a person who's quite obsessed with human beings. Now, this series of episodes we're going to have in this series with Caroline is going to be about um, the blind spots, we can say, that most of the technology people may have, because most of the technology people, as far as I understand, are quite obsessed with what next the technology can do. But we're going to talk a little bit more about like the things that perhaps technology cannot do, or they need to complement um, the advancement of technology. For example, where would be the place of ethics or development of ethical frameworks as we're building these new technologies such as AI or machine learning? So let me throw the ball and then we take it from here and we hope that our audience is going to enjoy it, Caroline. So there's lots of buzzword. There's lots of buzzword around AI to the point that the AI has turned conventionally more to something like as business tools and do things faster. And it's watered down, like often we talk about the kind of a general AI in the business world, and lots of people with very little background in AI actually are talking about AI, which, I mean, it's not the worst problem that we deal with, but that's something to pay attention to, and as an observer and also as a player in the field. So um, now, so you work with lots of tech leaders,
Yep.
and you see the type of problems they deal with. A big part of that has nothing to do whatsoever with technology. Yeah. Would you like to create the picture so that we can take the conversation from there?
Sure, Ashkan. And yes, AI is everywhere, but as you and I both know, what we're dealing with on a daily basis is often not true AI. That's still a long way down the track, but yet closer than we thought maybe 5 years ago. The last couple of years in particular, we've seen huge leaps and bounds through generative AI. Um, but the people that I'm working with and the people that I observe and get to engage with, their biggest issues are people issues. I mean, yes, technology is profoundly impactful. It's moving so fast, and they're very focused on how do we shape the technology? What are the best use cases? How do we deliver technology in a way that people can engage with it so it's commercially viable, so it's profitable? These are important issues for leaders. But also where I play is, how do we build high performing teams? How do we get the best from our people? How do we get our people to show up, our teams to deliver on what they need to deliver in a way that is cost effective, productive, and also delivering products and solutions that are a good fit for the market, that are going to
Mhm.
be, you mentioned the word ethical frameworks. It's like they need to be effective and to work, but also to be good for the users. One of my old clients used to talk a lot about trustworthy technology. We need to deliver technology that is actually in the best interests of users. That's not only going to deliver what they're expecting, but be safe, manage their data well, be secure. And these are obviously challenges that leaders deal with on a daily basis. So it's
Yeah.
technology for the common good.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's great, and that I think that helps creating the context. So, one of the things that I've observed, then, uh, in working with people in the technology sector is, as I've mentioned, they're quite obsessed with what next technology can do. Yeah. And but if you want to put all these jargons and, like, even, using the word performance has turned into a kind of a thing that, the moment that we talk about performance, we immediately are envisioning KPIs and things like that,
Sure.
measurements. And but at the end of the day, look, if you want to generalize that conversation and zoom out, performance is like how you perform, how you operate, how you engage in this thing called life, or in the context of what we're discussing is like how you, participate in the game that your team is playing in building the next piece of technology. So therefore, I want to humanize the term performance here a little bit, as opposed to like this kind of a jargon that can be used in the workplace with, with KPIs and measurements and things like that. Now, in that, we so know that in order for any piece of product or technology coming out, a group of people need to work together. Let me correct what I've said. Not just a group of people, group of individuals, but a team, or
Mm.
in some cases, depends on the scale or the size of the project or the program that we're running there. We need the collaborations between multiple different teams sometimes, and it happens a lot that not within an organization but beyond. Yeah, so
Yeah.
partnership is extremely important, collaboration is extremely important. um, Gaining clarity around the scope is extremely important, so that we don't deal with the scope creep. And then we need the presence, because we need to listen quite carefully. We need to understand the market, basically again demystifying that term market, like there's a bunch of people sitting out there being in need of something. So if you're not being present to the market, if you're not being present, if you when we're listening to each other, if there is no trust being built, if we're just a group of individuals, even high performing individuals sitting together, not becoming a team, basically bringing that care and bond and love and whatever basically it's required to turn a group of individuals to a team. And if you don't communicate effectively and so on, those new pieces of technologies are not going to be built. Or if they get built, they're not going to be communicated effectively. So, in saying all that, it's like we see that a big part of this problem has basically nothing to do whatsoever with technology itself. And that's exactly the area that people like you and I forgot to mention that uh, despite the fact that you have extensive experience working with different teams and leaders out in this industry, you are a person who's quite familiar with the being discourse and my body of work around effectiveness, performance, and integrity. And you're a graduate of being Mastery, the only exclusive program that I run, and which is quite advanced. Yeah. So you have that experience. You have in-depth understanding of the being framework, my body of work. Now you go out there and you work with lots of people. So, um, so what are the top topics? If I ask you this, that you often see most of these different organizations, different teams deal with when it comes to having people working together, collaborate in the pursuit of building the next piece of technology.
You remind me of a conversation I had with a client just this week. And
Mhm.
he, and it's a typical scenario these days. He's in Australia, he reports to America, he has team members in Italy and Europe and elsewhere. And so he was sharing, that one of his team members had gone quiet on a deliverable and had not delivered it within the time frame that he expected, but there hadn't been communication. And he was like, oh, so he was making assumptions about what was or wasn't happening. And so I unpacked it and we talked about, what structures he needed to have in place in terms of communication, who he needed to be as a leader in terms of his presence and his awareness and, his partnership in those relationships, not just with the team member who was AWOL, but with his other team members as well. How was he engaging with them? What kind of leader was he being? Um, and the upshot was, that he was going to engage in a conversation because the initial question was, I need to have a difficult conversation. But once we
Mm,
unpacked it, and looked at the assumptions and the lack of presence and some of the assumptions he was making about what was going on over there and what he need
mm,
how he needed to respond as a leader, and we were able to sort of build some structures and some deeper understanding of who he wanted to be as a leader, and then what he could put in place moving forward, and how he could clarify with each of his
yeah,
team members independently how he best led them and what they needed from him, and also for him to clarify what he needed from them. And so,
yeah,
we'll follow up with this in the next conversation, but just in terms of how to engage with your people, how to build team, some
yeah,
of the other issues that my clients often raise, is how to influence their team members, yes, also their peers, and to manage up to their leaders, and how to influence the agenda, and how to be able to have a voice in the important
mhm,
conversations about the technology roadmap and where they were going, and how they were, what they were planning to deliver for their clients and why and how. Does that answer your
mm.
question?
Yeah. So I think you've mentioned two now. Yeah. So what was the first one, if you want to say, like
The
the
first one was
topic that
really
you.
about how to engage as a leader and how to engage with your people and to create those shared awarenesses, that partnership in terms of who
Yeah.
he wanted to be as a leader and what he expected from his people, and how to ensure that they were engaged, that they were able to tap into their own intrinsic motivation and really bring
Mm,
their best. Because, at the end of the day, I've never met anybody who didn't want to do a good job,
mm,
who didn't want to feel like they were making a contribution, but it's how do we as leaders provide those opportunities and that
yeah.
clarity of communication to ensure that people know what is expected of them and how to succeed, how to win in their work.
Yeah, beg to differ. I mean, I a
Sure.
little bit disagree because like I've seen people that I don't think that genuinely they are there to want to contribute, you know. And there are many, but yeah. So if I want to be quite authentic around it,
Yeah, I like to
the
believe the best
smallest.
of people, and I find that when I do, that's
Yeah.
what I get back, but sure, we all
Yeah.
have different experiences, I accept that.
Yes, yes, yeah. So yeah, so definitely like that's one of the things that I think when we add people in the team, it's quite important to look into like how what's their relationship with care. Because the traditionally speaking, there are times that we have people that basically they want to get paid for the time spent. But I would say, you
Sure.
know, I agree with you that wide majority of the people they see meaning in the work that they do and they really genuinely want to contribute. But yeah, so let's move on from that. So that's one, the engagement, and what else?
Influence is an important piece. They want to
Mm,
have a voice. They want to be able to influence the agenda, the technology roadmap, to be able to influence how the organization is delivering for its stakeholders, its customers. And it's sometimes because tech leaders often come from a technical background, they have extensive knowledge and skills and expertise, but they haven't
mm,
always done the work to develop their communication skills, their
yes,
influence and their softer skills, their ability to listen well, to build trust and rapport. I've worked with leaders who just came in, and they expected people just to get on board with their
yeah,
ideas, and they didn't realize that there's a process. You need to take people on the journey. You need to help them understand why you want to do it that way and what the benefit of that will be. And when they can understand that, then often they'll get on board. But it's a process. And so
yeah,
when technology leaders haven't developed these skills, it can leave them frustrated because they've got this brilliant
yeah,
expertise. They see the vision. Technology leaders are so forward seeing and far sighted. But if they don't have the skills and the softer skills, particularly the communication, the influence, to be able to drive the agenda, that can leave them
mm,
frustrated, feeling like they're out on the outer.
yeah. So that's very familiar to me as well. Yeah, I think of my experience also working in the industry, and still like we do have large software development teams and technologists working together, building platforms, and both internally as well as like we work with through our services arm, we work with lots of different organizations, and that is the case because often you need to have this is the challenge. Now often you need to have people taking leadership roles from team leaders all the way to, let's say, product managers, all the way up to CTOs and CIOs. You have to, in a way, have them coming from a technology background. You need them to understand the codes, the technological pieces, and um, having that kind of a mutual language so that they can talk to the members of the team. They need to know the jargons in technology, and not only conceptually for them to understand what is going on, which basically the board of directors would want them, but also to be respected by the team members that are actually doing the operational work in the teams. So therefore, if you want them to have that kind of a background, they're coming from the background, as you said, that most of them, to our experience, they haven't been that much focused on people's skills. Yeah, if you want to just use that on the surface, and then we can dive deeper, because we can talk about the skills, like you touched the word and touch on the word soft skills, and I know that we both have lots of things to say about the soft skills as it's being said. But uh, but then if there are the people that they have that deep technological background and they didn't invest much of their time learning how to read people, how to understand people, how to interact with people, how to listen effectively, how to hold someone to account, how to have uncomfortable, assertive conversations when the time comes up. So there's going to be a big lacking. Yeah. Now, do you agree that in comparison with some other sectors or some other fields, technology leaders, the people with technological background that they occupy leadership roles, they would suffer considerably more, if we don't want to be politically correct, in terms of their people skills.
I mean, traditionally, yes, there was the idea of the person in the back room, doing the coding,
Mm,
developing software, and they didn't need the people skills. And there are still a lot of people, who are introverted, who
yeah,
are very much steeped in the technology, and they haven't even thought about the people skills, and they haven't needed to, so long as they could deliver particularly in today's world where so many of these roles are now
yeah,
remote, or it's like through
yeah,
COVID, people started working at home and they've continued because they don't need to
yeah,
necessarily be on site. The people skills have been sort of left to kind of, and they're not in focus.
yeah,
And there's
yeah,
so much technology that we do need to be developing, that we do need to be aware of and learning. To be a technologist, you have to be a lifelong learner. And then to add the people
yeah,
skills on top can feel like, oh, that's a whole lot more.
yeah,
But
it can be overwhelming.
if you want to advance as a tech leader, if you want to move up the chain and to become ultimately a product manager, a CIO, a CTO, a project leader or a program leader, these skills are essential because we do need to
Yeah,
work with other people. We need to be able to communicate, to collaborate,
yeah,
to partner, to listen. If you want
yeah,
to solve challenges, to be able to negotiate skillfully, resolve conflicts, you've got to be able to listen, and that is a skill in itself, which
yeah,
requires a
yeah.
great deal of presence and thoughtfulness.
No, no,
Yeah.
yeah. So see, for example, like if you are an account manager, if you are a salesperson,
Mm.
a BDM, like you have to, like that's part of your job. You have to work with people.
Absolutely.
You need to be likable to a degree, and you need to be able to influence people so that they go ahead and then you can close the deals.
Mhm.
Or for example, like if you're in support team, like constantly you need to be dealing with people that are not satisfied with certain part of the product or something like that, and you gradually need to learn how to handle tough situations. Yeah, but
Yeah, absolutely.
exactly as you said, traditionally speaking, like as a typical technology person, you didn't necessarily need to deal with all that. Now that being said, they still like they always needed to be working with each other at least, like but it's an easier conversation between like two technical people, and they can get quite fascinated by each
Jump down
other's
rabbit holes,
conversation.
can't you? And that's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, yeah.
So I was gonna say, I
Go
wonder what
on.
the impact of generative AI and emerging AI tools is going to have, because I think increasingly coding will be done by the technology itself. And so the human beings working in tech will need those softer skills, will need that communication, that influence, because increasingly they're working with customers, they're working with other people in the organization. Is that where you see it going?
Well, yeah. So if we want to talk about the coding, so there was like from 1980s, oh, you'd say, particularly, there were many different mm, groups of people and certain organizations, certain companies, they've tried to um, take computer programming to a higher degree, like making it higher level, encapsulate more of these complexities by developing these new drag and drop kind of IDEs, like integrated development environments, and often in big part you would say that all of these projects failed. And I was actually part of like creating one of them here in Australia with a company that I used to work with. We wanted to build a kind of an integrated development environment in which you can remove or minimize the amount of coding as much as possible when it comes to building complex case management software. Now, but like you can remove some of the complexities, you can encapsulate that, but at the end of the day, we needed to come up with a new scripting language because like there are certain niche, very specific needs that they would come up within the flow of the application that then still you needed to do some coding. Now, going forward, I think that plain language, like particularly with English, Chinese, it can be Spanish and Arabic. So some of these languages are going to be the languages that we talk to computers. And I guess that it's going to replace some part of coding, but we should not forget that computer programming and building softwares and building technology is not just coding. So some part of the coding can be maybe taken care of, and that's a good news. But I don't think the whole computer programming, and that brings us to the point that you brought up. Yes, so by let's say encapsulating some more part of that complexity around coding, then more of a simple plain conversations with the machines and with each other would be perhaps needed, and that's another area I think worth paying attention to. Yeah.
What do you think, Ashkan, are the biggest challenges facing technology leaders moving forward? Like, the world is definitely changing. Technology is moving faster and faster.
Mm.
Where do you see, the key kind of opportunities and threats?
No, we're a very good one. Yeah. As this person who's quite obsessed with human beings, and obviously, then I'm this person who's obsessed with human beings, um, and I happen to be a technologist. I think that that gives me a very unique perspective to where technology is going, and what kind of an impact the advancement of the new technology is going to have on human beings. So my understanding is most of my peers, when it comes to technology, they've been quite obsessed with what next can be done through technology. In my case, was like it's a while now that I'm focusing on the areas that cannot be fully answered or addressed by technology itself alone. So I'm leveraging my familiarity with technology to see what sort of complementary thing is required, go alongside technology so that it can serve humanity better. Because let's not forget that not all technologies are good. You know, so there are severe concerns around the ethical consideration that we need to put in place. For example, like privacy or safety. Like some of these things are really being challenged at the moment with some of these new technologies coming up. And I think, for example, the policymakers, they need to like mm, uh, work with people that not only understand technology, but also they understand and they have an understanding of ethics, and some of the core principles that we have, let's say, from a democratic perspective, so that we don't let the technologies become these powerful tools, abusive tools that they can um, basically enslave human beings in multiple different ways, or they can eradicate the liberty or the core principles that we believe in, yeah, in the modern world. Now, so yeah, so I would say one of the biggest one is the continuous the development of ethical frameworks that they can go along um, with the development of technology. So that would be one of the things that I'm actually very interested in, and I'm constantly working to gain that kind of understanding that is required, that they can I can then elaborate on them, articulate them in my body of work.
I spent 25 years consulting to the Australian Computer Society, writing their
Mm.
columns in the Australian newspaper. And one of the concerns that we had back then was that policymakers always seem to be way behind where the
Yeah,
technology is. Technology develops so quickly. There's so
yeah,
much focus on the next thing, and the policymakers are, something has to go wrong before they will actually act, or there needs to be a big hue and cry. Um,
yeah,
and one of the organizations I do some work with is IFEP, which is the International Federation for Information
mhm,
Processing, or the global professional
yeah,
body for the tech sector. They have actually, through their ethical arm, IP3, they've developed an ethical framework, and it's based on the ACM um,
yeah,
ethical framework. So, I feel like this is good because we can't wait for policymakers to catch up. It's the technologists themselves who really need to take responsibility for,
mm,
what are we doing with the technology and how are we protecting our users? Um, because governments and regimes and policymakers, they're never going to catch up. if they're always going to be behind. And so then the
Yeah,
question is, how do we, as leaders in the tech industry, own that space and really move that forward? What do you
definitely.
think? The professional bodies are doing their bit, but what else is available for technology leaders in terms of taking that further?
Yeah. So I think like that, no, that was really good catch because like immediately I talked about like policymakers, but that as I agree with you, that's a last resort. I mean, um, so we ethics and morality would be something that it needs to be developed within the culture, and definitely when it comes to the technology leaders, I think that they have now a massive responsibility around the technologies that are being built, what sort of ethical frameworks that they already are tapping into, and that can make a huge difference. And then of course then the governments, they can basically, then policymakers, they can come in and then try to put certain things in place. To be fair, it's not really easy. It's not really easy to
Mm.
see the impact because, see, often when you create something, whatever content that is going to be, whether it's going to be a book, it's going to be a YouTube video, it's going to be a piece of technology, a revolutionary, innovative technology. The moment that you release that content or that product and whatever that is, that value proposition, um, it's in big part it's out of the hands of the initial founders or inventors, the creators, and it goes beyond the initial intentions that you may have. That's the very nature of anything that is being created. So for example, I don't think that Mark Zuckerberg and like the people worked with him initially, when they were developing Facebook, they could clearly and vividly see what sort of impacts like Facebook is going to have, all these social medias are going to have on people's life. Now a good part of it can be, I think, predicted. So that's exactly what I'm saying, that we need leaders, to your point as well, like we need technology leaders, that they can understand human beings, they can understand human needs, they can understand the pitfalls and the parts that they can get out of hand. And I think there are a number of people that keep talking about them quite actively. Let's say for example Elon Musk is quite vocal around some of the concerns that he has around AI. Now, on my end, I share some of those concerns, but I think let me share this perspective. The moment, because we talk about like job replacement and AI is going to come in, then just eradicate jobs and da da da, da, and also these concerns around privacy and human liberty. So the thing is, we had the same sort of problems or concerns when, after Industrial Revolution, when the advancement of these machineries, I mean, these pieces of machinery, has been there. Yeah. So now let's say, for example, a forklift. The forklift comes in and can lift weights, like heavy weights that many people, human beings like with massive body mass and muscles, they can't. So basically there's no competition in that regard. Now, at some point the value of human being was quite associated with its manpower. The workers, they could have been clearly threatened when they see this machinery come, but there's always an opportunity when it comes to these things. For example, what has happened was, we outsourced these heavy, quite dangerous types of work to machines, and that created a kind of a luxury for us, and that was quite important because we started paying more attention to our intellect, our cognitive abilities, beyond the kind of a physical power a person holds. That led to so many perhaps great things. For example, um, if you were to have women in the workplace, if the women were supposed to like compete with men in the in job market at the time, and then the value of a person was like how
Yes.
strong you are physically. So
And
most
women can't really
women,
compete.
they couldn't, and that was the thing. So
Mm.
therefore, I think, so it had that kind of a benefit that, like, women could create lots of opportunities, because most of the work now is becoming intellectual. It becomes more cognitive. And so, yeah, so we paid more attention to our intellect, and computing abilities, to say.
Mhm.
Similarly, then there was a time that I think that, like, some super people should definitely know, but the word computer was not a word referring to a device or piece of machinery, but it was a job occupation. So for example, in NASA, they had computers that would sit there. They would be expert in applied mathematics. They would um, solve these algebraic equations, et cetera, et cetera. And they were quite threatened the time that the first commercialized IBM computers were coming in. But immediately it turned into an opportunity, because yes, these computers are there. They can compute. The computation power is way beyond any human being, even collectively. But they needed to be programmed, and they needed to be, operated. So therefore, this it gave birth to this new industry of computer programmers and developers and so on. Now, having said all of these things, I think in the midst of all of these threatening news, I think sits a very, very glorious, magnificent, astounding opportunity, which to me is, so now we're getting to this point that we are capable of outsourcing a big part of this computation, um, to the machines. Yeah, so the AI, the machine learning, all of these the new technologies, they can take care of a big part of this computation. Now, similar to the time that we outsourced the heavy lifting through forklifts, now we are outsourcing this massive computing task to the machines, and it's creating yet another luxury for us. And this is the time that we want to go beyond our innate intellect and computation ability. And that is going to bring us, create this opportunity for us to pay attention to other, perhaps more important dimensions to our consciousness. Let's say, for example, spirituality. And by spirituality, I don't mean necessarily religion or something like that. Basically, paying more attention to the well being of our spirit and our soul, if you want to put it that way. And seeking meaning in life. So getting these new technologies, leveraging them, and getting them to serve us. Now, the danger here is if we don't have that kind of a self-esteem, and we're not polished enough to be the responsible people, autonomous people who can leverage these new technologies, they can take advantage of us. Like, you can see it even with existing technologies. Yeah. So for example, like, your phone is there to serve you, but then it also has this potential that you can become addicted to the screen. It's like how you use the tool. Yeah. How
Mm.
you can harm a person with a knife. You can do a surgery and save a life. So it's not about the tool. I see lots of people are attacking these tools and everything. Um, and it's not about a tool. It's about how equipped you are mentally and emotionally to leverage these tools effectively, so that they contribute to the integrity of your life as an individual, and also how we collectively can leverage them so that they can contribute to the integrity of our lives altogether. Now, that's idealistic. The problem is that I shared this concern with the critics to these technologies, because we know in reality there's going to be a good proportion of us that we're not going to put the time, we're not going to go through the learning curves, we're not going to be on top of the technology, so the technologies can abuse us and then can enslave us, can actually deprave us from that integrous life. Now, and here obviously, like, education is important, in all of these things, including the kind of a work that you do and we do, I think, with regards to working with technology leaders, focusing on the human side, human aspect of the work that they do. but also per individual responsibility. So I think that if this is a kind of a step we are taking forward in creating these conversations with the people that are listening to us, and we're not the only ones, I think that that's extremely important. So it's a kind of a double-edged sword. It can contribute to the integrity of our life exponentially because of the nature of these new technologies, extremely different to the previous ones, and leverage them, or we can succumb to them and be enslaved by them. And that's why it makes it extremely important for us to provide that leadership, both individually and collectively. Yeah.
No, I hear you. We need to be role models. And you often talk about, the autonomy that we have as human beings. And we all have that, regardless of our circumstances. We have some autonomy. We can choose.
Mm.
And it's the choice we make that will shape our lives, shape our experience of our lives. And, whether we are, as you say, being exploited by the technology or manipulated by it or um, addicted to it, or whether we're actually just leveraging it as a tool that can enhance the quality of our lives. So,
Yes.
interestingly, so what then are the possibilities for people who do want to be role models, who do want to, be effective as leaders? If it's not our cognitive ability that's going to set us apart moving forward, if the technology can, particularly generative AI, can create for us, can code for us, um, do we differentiate ourselves on our emotional intelligence, or is it our spirituality, our creativity? Where should people be devoting their attention?
Well, I mean, to start, like I think my body of work is well documented and clear, and like it's clear to you, and I just emphasize on that. Um,
So sorry, Ashkan, for those who aren't familiar with your body of work, who may be here because they're technology leaders and this is new, what do we want them to know in terms of the possibilities for them?
Yeah, so yeah, I wanted to say the same thing that it's well documented there. So we need to start with our being. Basically, being is a cluster word for our thoughts, emotions, decisions, and thoughts and behavior and actions that we take. So it's a cluster word, yeah. So it's how you relate to various different content in this word, and then you act upon them. For example, like how you relate. A couple of times you talked about autonomy. Yeah, how do you relate to autonomy? Are you living life from this viewpoint that you are a passive victim? Life is just occurring to you. All these technologies are being built, and then you're going to be impacted by them, and then you have no say. Or no, you are an active agent. You are this person who can influence to a degree, of like in negotiating this shared reality that we have within the society. So depends on how you relate to autonomy, which I'll call it responsibility, as you know. Then you're going to make different decisions, and the combination of your decisions, the aggregation of your decisions as you go, in great part are going to determine the type of outcome or achievements you're going to have and results you're going to produce. Hence, they're going to impact your unique experience of life. Yeah. So therefore, I would say like it's extremely important for the technology leaders, like many other leaders, but we're emphasizing because of the two things. One, because as we said, the technology leaders, in most part, there are exceptions, they are the ones that they would have not spent a good amount of time focusing on the people skills, as you call them, or as I call like the people side. Yeah, they didn't necessarily need to have that as they grow their career to a degree. But the moment that they're stepping into leadership role, that's a completely different game. And I'm pretty sure lots of people in the tech industry, they deeply resonate with what I'm saying. Yeah. Number, so that's one, that there's that need. Number two is the responsibility is going to be bigger on their side now because the tech leaders are the pioneers, are the ones that are leading the development of these technologies, and deeply understanding that whatever you're producing is going to have a massive impact in a child that is sitting and using that technology. Yeah. in his room, that person at high school, like the person is doing her assignment, all the way to all the other people in the society. So the moment that you know, you deeply know that these technologies that you're building, it's going to have an impact, and perhaps severe impact. Sometimes, unfortunately, on the negative side, it can lead people to commit suicide and dissociate themselves from the existence. And on the positive end, you can like give the people, metaphorically give the people wings to fly. So the thing is, yeah, so due to these two reasons, I would say extremely important for the tech leaders to look inward, look into the human qualities. Some of these qualities are mentioned, and we work on them in my body of work. um, we call them aspects of being, qualities such as authenticity, how congruent your conceptions of reality is really with how things actually are. Things like courage, assertiveness, proactivity, things like partnership and compassion and forgiveness, and things like commitment and responsibility, and so on. So, yeah, so that's a really good starting point for the technology leaders, to look inward and then identify the gaps, identify the trouble side, and then relate to them as growth potential. Now, the thing is, we need to, as technology leaders, we need to support people building themselves, or we build the people, we develop
Mm.
people, and then they develop our organizations and products and everything. So it's not necessarily an altruistic conversation. Oh, let's work on our soft skills. It's actually a necessity. Yeah. So if focusing on the human qualities was a kind of a luxury or desirable in the past, I think that as we're going, they're becoming extremely vital. So it's not just a matter of growth, but even survival in this kind of a fast-paced environment that we have, particularly in the tech industry. So the leaders that they can see more vividly, like for example, Steve Jobs used to, yeah, people of that caliber. When you see people, when you see um, the the burning pain of people out there,
Mm.
um, and you're compassionate enough to actually, so you have a validated market, and then you're compassionate enough and willing enough to go there and try to come up with the solutions, align different people from multiple different fields, bring them together, and turn that into products and offerings and services, and then you can serve them. So yeah,
Yeah,
so the
actually,
more
just
you,
on that point, Ashkan, sorry, can I just
yeah,
reinforce? Because
sure,
it
sure.
was Steve Jobs, he was technically strong. He was very smart, intellectually brilliant. But it was his human qualities that allowed him to be so effective, to
Definitely.
actually create products of such quality and that was so created so much demand, because they
Yeah,
were so desirable and there was such an audience and
yeah,
a market for them.
yeah.
It was his human qualities more than his technical that made him
I
who he
cannot
was.
be agreed more. Definitely. See,
Mm,
lots of there are people like in the technology realm that they didn't really like Steve Jobs, and there are the ones they so adore him. So, like any other extremely successful person in the field, like he's a kind of a polarizing person by the nature of it. But whether we like him or not, like we can't ignore him. Yeah. So the thing is, definitely he was this genius, not in building technology necessarily, but first in reading people's need, in understanding people, in understanding of how computers should be designed and implemented and be built so that they can serve the way that people want to be served. And that was a big thing that was really missing. And not only it led to the growth of a company called Apple or certain products, but it generated new industries. For example, let's say the UX designer. I strongly believe that his contribution was massive in creation of a whole industry like around UX design, user experience design, and few other things. So yeah, long story short, what we're saying is, as a technology leader, like these qualities that we mentioned, like to be able to vividly and authentically see what's going on, compassion, willingness, commitment. And so many of these different qualities are extremely important for you to be able to align people, create a vision, align people around it, create teamwork, and build teams, and build products and services and so on, so that you can serve. So extremely important for the technology leaders, especially nowadays, to look into these deep qualities, go way beyond merely focusing on building softer skills, because it's not just the skills. The skills are on the surface, but it's all these subtle, deeper qualities that needs to be addressed. So that's basically the big part of the conversation in the being framework and the being discourse. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to more of these conversations. This is the first in a series, as we've said. And I believe our next one, we're going to be looking deeper into some of the challenges that tech leaders face and how they can operate more powerfully and effectively in their various environments. Thank you, Ashkan. Really enjoyed this first discussion and look forward to the next one. And thank you to our
No,
listeners.
thank you. Thank you very much, Caroline, with being with me. I hope that our audience are enjoying these conversations, particularly the people in the tech industry. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Caroline. Talk soon.
Talk soon.